Because I'm Carlos, episode number 28. Bit of a surprise, not surprise episode on this one. Because I had the idea in my head that I was going to do a couple of episodes in December because I wanted to make sure I included some of the audio versions of it for the channel and also for the audio feed. Now, at the same time that I'm saying this, just to let everybody know, I am actually you're going to have back-to-back episodes if you're on the audio version of the feed. Because I realized actually the other day that I hadn't posted the audio version onto the Anchor. So you're going to get that episode 27, and then you're going to get episode 28. But episode 27, in my opinion, is still relevant, so hopefully you'll enjoy having two consecutive episodes. For the folks that caught it on YouTube, this is just going to be your episode number 28, so it's going to be in chronological order anyway. You'll be good to go. Otherwise, I wanted to chat about a couple things tonight that I was thinking of a little bit earlier and kind of talking on the idea and the topic of content, because that is one of my favorite little topics to touch on through various of these versions, as well as through videos that I do on the channel. Now, before I do, I also want to quickly interject a quick note to say congratulations to Fred McGriff for being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. They did the contemporary era committee, I guess, kind of vote, and Fred McGriff ended up being the only one being elected through that process. Certainly deserved. I believe his career warranted because he was basically a near 500 home run guy in the era when home runs suddenly inflated, but at the same time, his numbers stayed pretty consistent, indicative of somebody who hadn't been on performance-enhancing drugs. And I'm pretty comfortable that through his career, he was clean. So it's one of those things where I understand from the perspective of who want to keep the Hall of Fame pure. Fred McGriff is certainly a worthy addition. Mind you, there are people who did performance-enhancing drugs who are in the Hall of Fame right now. So it's a bit of a hypocrisy thing. That all said, in all honesty, Barry Bonds would have been in there for me. He would have been definitely on my ballot, as well as Roger Clemens. But it's one of those things, I understand why. Of course, in the same vein, a lot of folks would point to Curt Schilling, but I kind of enjoy that Curt Schilling was dumb enough to open his mouth, and I kind of want to reward him by not putting him in for a very long time. It's one of those, it's a Pete Rose clause for me personally, where if you're dumb enough, it's not about what you did necessarily, but it's just your stupidity about it. I kind of don't want to ever reward you while you're alive. After he's dead, I'm quite content in Pete Rose being in the Hall of Fame because he never gets to enjoy it, and that's the part I enjoy. But I'm spiteful and petty like that. And if you guys have checked out the channel at all, you know that that's kind of how I roll. And for me, that'd be kind of funny. Now, regardless, moving on from the Hall of Fame topic, I actually want to get into the topic itself, and that is the idea of content and the idea of coming up with ideas, and also that it's not easy. And it's one of those things where it seems self-evident, but at the same time, what reminded me of it was that when I woke up on Sunday morning, I had no intention and no plans whatsoever of recording any video. So all through Sunday, I'm watching some football, I'm doing some errands, I'm doing all kinds of things, basically doing anything that's not related to YouTube. I watched a little bit of YouTube in the evening, kind of wind down. There's a couple of PWCC auctions on, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm basically doing all manner of other things without any specific agenda or any plan to make any kind of a video. But then towards the tail end here, I'm winding down. It's later on in the evening. And one of the things that I decided to do is I like to do a little digital cleaning, especially as we get towards the tail end of the year. And one of the things that I did is I went into my YouTube page and I went into my subscriptions. And I started going through the subscriptions. I wanted to see if there were anything that maybe doesn't make sense anymore. I don't really watch the channel, or some cases where maybe some channels have basically gone dormant. And if that's the case, I kind of start looking through cull the herd a little bit, and I decide to just remove some videos. And as I start going through the list, I start remembering a couple of different channels that I had subscribed to that maybe I was watching their videos for quite a long time. And then I go and check, and I'm just curious, like, am I not picking up the videos, or is it a case where they just haven't made any in a long time? And I check, and a number of them was, 6 months since the last video, 8 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years at this point. So it's one of those things where if I'm seeing that kind of thing, I start dropping them off a little bit. There's some folks that I know who I'll keep subscribed just to kind of support, themselves because they're still around, but they don't make videos very regularly, and that's fine. But I'm referring to channels that very clearly have gone dormant, and I don't think there's any intention to make any additional videos. And a number of them were sports card channels, which should not come as any kind of surprise. The more cynical and kind of the know-it-all kind of content creators out there will be like, well, obviously, the industry is down and the economy is bad and all these things. And I go, yes, but the problem is you're looking at a very simplistic metric on this. I'm looking at what they were doing, and a lot of them were more collector-based channels. So yes, there could very well be an element to the declining economy and the whole current state of the industry. But for a lot of these channels, they were more collector based. And it's one of those things where life gets in the way. Other things can take priority. And especially if, you're looking at economic factors, people aren't running out to go buy things. And the problem is if you have a channel that's based on the idea of you talking about new acquisitions or talking about things in your collection, maybe you've already talked through most of the stuff in your collection that you wanted to talk through, done all your showcases that you wanted to do. So then if there's nothing new coming in, you don't really have anything else to say or anything else to add, which is perfectly fine. It's one of those things where, for most of us, this is not a job. It's one of those things that it's kind of a hobby within a hobby. So in reality, there's no payoff really if you walk away from it or take some time off or, do your own business. In most instances, this should just be something that you do because you do enjoy it, because it enhances and adds to your hobby experience. And if it does, or gives you a sense of community or whatever that happens to be for you, then that's a very good reason to kind of keep going, and that'll keep you motivated and kind of keep you moving forward. If you don't have that, then certainly I can understand why you wouldn't be that motivated to make additional videos. Or if you are, like I said, somebody who spends most of their time before talking about new acquisitions and things like that, if you're just not buying anything or adding anything to the collection, well, then you're not going to have much to talk about. So once again, I'm completely understanding of where you would end up there as far as that's concerned. So I found a number of these channels fell under those categories and just started dropping them off and removing them, which is, pretty normal. It's one of those things that happens, and we'll see if they ever come back down the road. And if they do, and they start making content again, then maybe I'll check it out. And if I think it's worthwhile to put it back on, I'll resubscribe. But the whole point that I came to when I was starting to go through that exercise is that it got me thinking about the nature of how difficult it is to have consistency and really kind of produce videos or podcasts or whatever you want on a regular basis. It's one of those things where it feels like, oh, well, you just, turn on a camera and start talking. Well, first of all, that's a very awkward thing to do. Or even in the case like this, turn on a microphone and start talking. Well, again, it's kind of awkward. It's one of those things that's not a normal thing for most people to do. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. And the other piece of the puzzle is not everybody wants to do it. And truthfully, not everybody has much or anything that they really feel like they want to say, or especially record, because they might have something to say, but they might not want to have a record of it that gets played back for them. But it's one of those things where it's a very specific and more unique thing than a lot of people would give credit for. But the truth is that I think what helps a channel allow it to continually put out content or continually put out, podcasts or whatever the case may be, is that you have to have some kind of a idea that doesn't center around just one specific topic or one specific lane. It's one of those things that as my channel started to evolve, I was able to kind of have a little bit of fun with slowly adjusting it. I've talked about it a little bit before, but initially when I started doing the sports card side of the YouTube channel is that I started doing box breaks because, that was just an easy way for me to start. I wanted to buy some boxes. At the time, they were more affordable, so it was a little bit easier for me to partake in that. But truthfully, it was never kind of my genre. Even though I like opening the boxes, I can't feign enthusiasm for cards that somebody else might be able to feign some enthusiasm for unless they interest me. And I'm not like a big, high energy, box breaker. It's one of those things where I kind of want to just go through the cards and check it out. And I just found that I enjoyed that more on my own. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to make box breaks in the future. Realistically, on the YouTube channel, I probably will in the not too distant future when I get the AEW flagship boxes coming in. I've got a couple of those, so I'm going to open them and I'll probably record them for the channel. But it's not my bread and butter. It's not the main thing that I do here. And realistically, if that's all I did, it's one of those things where, given the heightened costs of boxes and things of that sort, even if I was the kind of box breaker that could do that more energetically, well, that might actually work. A lot of the bigger channels in the space fall under the box breaking category. It's kind of an expensive way to get around making content, though. And I don't think I'd enjoy that in the long run. Yes, there are some products that definitely would interest me, and it'd be kind of fun to do that. But at the same time, it was never really going to be my scene. But it was not a terrible way to get started. When I found kind of my rhythm was when I started doing the more commentary, or doing kind of the talking pieces, similar to what I'm doing right now. But at the same time, I couldn't just do that, and I couldn't just do box breaks, and I couldn't just do the variety of those kind of things. I had to kind of make it a bit of a mix. I wanted to have the commentary videos. But I'm still a collector. So it's one of those things where I'll still have some showcases on the channel. I still want to be able to, kind of talk through and show my pickups. But it's one of those things where in the same vein also, like everybody else, I have to kind of be a little bit more responsible. But at the same time, I'm also looking at the current circumstances, and there are some folks who just aren't willing to adjust on price yet. So like I said, I mentioned a little earlier, I had actually was looking at PWCC auctions tonight, and I know some people freak out about PWCC, but the truth is, it's a tool for the job, and it has served its purpose for me. I don't always find something, but when I often do, I'm usually able to get something at what I deem to be a reasonable price. I know the rules of engagement, so I take into account the buyer's premium, so I kind of add that into my math. And if it still makes sense for me, I've been able to get some stuff at a pretty good price. Now, normally what I end up doing is I don't really ship it right away because then you get charged a little extra. So usually I'll let it sit in the vault a little bit longer. So then once it's time to actually get it shipped out to me, then I'm able to do it as a consolidated whole. So that means oftentimes if I'm only buying a card or two every couple of auctions, it'll be a little while before I actually end up sending stuff over. So at that time, I'll have a mail day for that. But what I found is I was going through my own channel as well, because right now, heading in December, we're doing the year-end stuff, and usually I do some year-end videos on the YouTube channel where I talk about the channel, I talk about my goals, and I talk about my favorite pickups. Well, in order to do that, I got to go through the videos and kind of refresh myself on a lot of the stuff that happened through the year. And one of the first things that I realized was a lot of stuff happened during the year. Already at this point on the YouTube channel, I've done more videos now in the beginning of December than I had done in all of 2021, which was by far the biggest year in terms of videos on my channel ever. So it's one of those things where I clearly found things to talk about. And I think what helped with that was what I said a little bit earlier. I didn't kind of limit myself to one lane. I have the talking videos like this that I enjoy doing, where I get to talk through some kind of an idea or something and then get feedback from folks and, have a conversation that way. Maybe I find something or hear something that inspires me, and then I can talk about that or react to it or respond to it. On the YouTube channel, I recently had a little bit of fun with the sports card documentary, the Behind the Card, and I gave my review. And then the director didn't like my review, and then I got to respond to that. So I had a little bit of fun with that as well. But that's one of those things where you just don't necessarily know what's going to happen. I realized once it came out that I was, let me do a review on this, and I checked it out. And I wasn't too impressed, but I was able to express that, make a video on it, and it turned out that led to another video. And then I was able to have some fun with that on the live stream. So in terms of all that, that's kind of how I developed my consistency. It didn't mean that I knew for sure, other than the live stream, every week that comes out, I can only assume that there's going to be one video on the channel. The only one that I know for sure is that the live stream is going to be on Fridays. And that's what I've been able to do. That is something I've been able to commit to consistently. But what I found is throughout the course of the year, I found different topics and different things happen that lead me down the rabbit hole of talking about this or talking about that. Even the news categories, because there are some channels that specialize in talking about news. I do talk about news, but not everything. It's one of those things where sometimes I'll find something that, I think there's something interesting here, something that I'd like to talk about, or maybe I'd like to take a little bit of an interesting angle. I'll check out some of the other coverage for it, and I'll realize, actually, you guys missed this, and I'd like to make sure that's included as part of the conversation. So there are ways and lanes to do it, but that's not going to be everybody's bag. Everybody's going to have a little different kind of perception of what they want to do. Even if they have a YouTube channel, even if they like making videos, it's one of those things where maybe they only want to talk about collector topics and they don't really want to talk about the news stuff, which is perfectly fine because there's already plenty of folks doing that now anyway. They don't want us to talk about all the drama stuff, and there's plenty of folks doing that as well. So there is kind of different niches for different kinds of folks that enjoy different kinds of content or different varieties of content. But finding your own lane, as critical as it is and as critical as it sounds, just describing it that way, is not as easy as it sounds either. So it's one of those things where, in theory, all you'd really have to do if you were going to advise somebody, and I've had those conversations on different live streams or different things where somebody says, what advice would you give to somebody? I say, well, the best advice is to start. Now, you have to understand that the early stuff is going to be bad because you haven't found your voice. You haven't figured out what combination of things work for you. Or even if you kind of know what you want to do, well, maybe that'll sustain you for a little while and then you run out of ideas. One of the kind of key points here that I'll kind of finish up on is that I used to have a big list of different folks in the hobby that I wanted to talk to. And then I realized after a while, I actually got through my whole list. I got through everybody that I really felt like I really needed to talk to. But then as time went on, I found other people that, hey, it'd be kind of interesting to have a conversation with this person. It'd be kind of interesting to have a conversation with this person. And as time went on, I started, getting those conversations arranged with them. And then I'd have that on the channel. But the thing is, instead of just continuously redoing the list and finding new names, it was one of those things where I would just kind of play it by ear. I would figure out what would make sense to me, and then I would pursue it. You contact somebody, you reach out, try to figure it out, schedule something, and then you get it done. But at the same time, I wasn't relying on that. I'm not an interview show. It's not something that I necessarily need to do that way. I like to have a conversation with these folks and talk some things throughout with them. And oftentimes it's something that maybe falls outside of my regular purview, something that isn't something that I normally get a chance to talk about, but having them on gives me that opportunity. And it lets kind of expand the horizons of the YouTube channel, so to speak. And that is the kind of thing that I enjoy because it gives me a little bit of variety myself. And it makes it a little bit more interesting because even though you kind of get pigeonholed into one category, obviously being where I am in Canada, most of the time we end up talking a lot about hockey, which is perfectly fine because obviously I'm versed in it. But at the same time, I don't always want to talk about hockey. I want to talk about baseball. I want to talk about football a little bit. I enjoy talking about wrestling cards. Obviously, I've gotten a chance to do that more so lately. But all these things add a little bit of variety and a little bit of spice to the channel and also to the content and gives me a chance to explore all these different categories and lets me have a variety of different branches and different ideas that I can go and pursue. And that is what keeps things interesting for me. That's why I don't need a list anymore. In addition to the list of the guests and people that I'd like to talk to, I also had a list of different topic ideas. That isn't to say that I don't have a list anymore. I'll occasionally have one or two that'll have coming up in my head that'll be, okay, in the next little while, I'd like to do one on this, and I'd like to do one on that. But I don't have like a big long list anymore, a big checklist as I start going through it. I had that much earlier on, but at this point, it's kind of like, I kind of play by ear. I just I watch and I listen. And funny enough, if you observe content yourself, you're going to find that different topics are going to hit you, and you're going to realize, a lot of people are talking about this. This is something that I'm kind of interested in. I've got my own kind of angle, my own opinion on this. Maybe I'd like to take a stab at that. Or, you know what? This is a really interesting point this person brought up. I'd like to respond to that a little bit. And of course, give them credit, put a link to their channel if you can. That's usually the best approach that I find. But at the same time, that can inspire you. And it's one of those things where somebody inspires you or gives you an idea, or even if you disagree with them, it's an opportunity. I found through the course of this year, I had a variety of different ones that were just responses to interviews or discussions. I got a chance on the channel recently to do a post-game show on a live stream and then have one of the guys come on, and we got a chance to chat about it. And that was fun. And that was enjoyable for me. So I'm being a little bit more open-ended on it versus the YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, it is Baubles and Ball Cards on YouTube. So I'll include a link to his channel in the description of the YouTube page, as well as on the audio version, because like I said, I want to make sure I put it on both, because I do know some folks actually do listen to the audio version. So I want to make sure you still have something as well, and we're not just relying on the YouTube algorithm and also the YouTube links that normally I would have. But anyway, that's kind of the general point that I wanted to talk about tonight. Like I said, I started off with not having any plan to record anything, and we ended up spending maybe about 15, 20 minutes talking about the different ways that content can be developed, and also the same way that I find to help me consistently put out videos and or podcasts. And that's how I do it. It's just the reality is that it just kind of keep my ears to the ground. I watch things, I listen to things, and I pay attention to kind of how people react to it. And that allows me to continuously have different possibilities and ideas. And I just enjoy going through it and breaking it down and having stuff to say. Not everybody's going to be like that. So truthfully, if it's not something that interests you that way, then just use whatever avenue you want in order to communicate as often as you actually want to. For some people, it's probably a better idea just to do it once in a blue moon, because then there's really no pressure, no sense of having to put out a certain amount of content. And that's something, honestly, that has helped me, because realistically, I don't have a set schedule. Outside of the live stream that I enjoy doing and having the regularity of having it all the time, there could be no other videos the entire week. There could be no other videos for weeks other than the live stream. And that would be perfectly fine. And nobody's really holding me accountable to it, because I haven't committed or promised anything. But I like having videos. I like having other pieces in there and having a variety of different topics that I get a chance to talk about. And that's what makes it fun for me. And that's what actually allows me and actually motivates me to keep doing it. So hopefully something in that little bit of ramble was useful or helpful. If you're on the YouTube channel and you got any questions or any thoughts about it, feel free to throw them in the comment section. If you're listening to the audio version of this, then, leave a 5-star review or whatever the podcast app lets you do. Otherwise, there'll be more. I think I'll do a couple more of these towards the end of the year here. As we start getting into the holiday season a little bit, I'll still record a few of these. And then on the YouTube channel, things are regularly there. And every single episode, I always include a link to the YouTube channel, even if you're on the audio version, so that you can check it out. There is tons of content on the YouTube channel, I can tell you. And in reality, what's going to be interesting this year is that I don't think I'm going to have the most amount of hours of content ever, but I've definitely have the most amount of videos ever. So there's definitely plenty of content in there. If you're a little bit bored during the holidays and you want some content, you can hit a playlist and you're good to go. Anyway, that's it for me for now. If you're on the YouTube thing, like if you like, subscribe to the channel. On the audio version, subscribe to the podcast. Thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.